Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Wednesdays are my favorite days because it is live stream day for Avero advisors. If you're joining us for the first time and you don't know who we are an independent third party technology consultant specializing in public sector agencies in terms of anything related to modernization. And we're going to dive into that today. Our topic is very unique because a lot of times we are asked and we are bombarded about being a tech firm, and that is absolutely not what we are. And Robert and I thought it would be a great idea to revisit this topic. If you follow us on our social media platforms, we have discussed this before, so make sure you check out our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. We go live every Wednesday and we share content because really, as a consulting firm, it's our job to be an independent advisor and help you all break through the noise of everything that's going on in terms of modernization. What is modernization? What does that mean? It could mean a lot of different things, but it's ultimately what it means for your organization, and we're here to help you do that. So, without further ado, you guys know Robert Kornovich, and I'm so happy that you're here with me today, Robert. We're gearing up for Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for. And I personally am ready to eat all the food next week. But before we begin, what are you most thankful for right now? We had to throw this in.
My clients are still incredibly interesting, and we serve just a broad spectrum from really small local government to major airports and everything in between. And that is just so much fun being able to do that. I tell people when they know my background in local gov, I got to move from serving one local gov organization to be able to serve many, 30 plus clients in a portfolio. And that just makes it eternally fun and exciting. It's challenging on days, especially with larger projects and keeping the momentum spun up and all those typical things we talk about on here. But it is so nice to have such interesting and varied clients that every year that portfolio gets bigger and bigger, and the challenges we take on and help people with get bigger and bigger as well. So much fun.
It is. It is. And I couldn't have said it any better. What fills my cup is, the work that we do touches so many lives, right? And it is very, very rewarding to be able to sit in a position where you can guide people through actual transformation and touch more lives than just that one person. So thank you for being here today. If you are joining us today, please, please, please comment. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your questions. I know AV had a great engagement last time, and RK and I really want to beat him in that. So please chat with us, ask us anything that you want to know. And I have shared our latest white paper, and it is based around a discussion that AV had given at ICMA this year. So please make sure that you download that with the QR right below our faces here. All right, so let's dive in, Robert. So Robert came to me and said, "Hey, I really think that we need to revisit this topic. I think it was great when AV and I did it years ago, but I think we need to revisit it." So Robert, dive into why you wanted to revisit this topic today on the live stream.
It's important to understand the unique role that we play, mainly because we are not just a technology firm. We do offer technology solutions. We can do some real hands-on work as well with your technology solutions, but we have tried very hard to not stray into the territory of just being a technology firm. Because the reason why we got into this business in the first place is our ability to relate and deal with the client and be their advocate so that they get a solution, not just a technology piece. And I think that's the biggest thing is we don't chase technology, we deliver solutions for the client. And it's important to keep an eye on that because we do have clients that ask us to come in and do very specific technical work, which we can in a lot of cases. There's also some other cases where it's more appropriate for an implementer to take that on specifically. So I always like to make the distinction because I think it really highlights the reason why clients hire us in the first place, which is they don't do this on a daily basis. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got a technology firm that they sell a product or a suite of products and they implement that all day long. And that is a massive difference, not only just in technical aspects and knowledge and experience, but also the change management aspects.
Oh yeah.
Because technology firms are selling a piece of technology. That's what they do. We are selling a solution that's actually viable, that's right sized for you, that is sustainable in the long run, actually does what it needs for you specifically. And tech firms don't focus on that. They focus on selling you a product.
Right. Right. And how many times, do organizations go through big modernizations like ERP transformations in one lifetime, right? Typically, these should be legacy projects. I mean, we've talked about that too. Sometimes they are not, right? Because they fail. But my point is, if you've never been through an ERP modernization or any modernization project, how do you know which product is the best fit for you? You know what vendors are telling you, right? But have you done the actual legwork that it takes to really understand where your organization is today and where you're going in the future, and which solution best fits that? That's where we come in, and that's exactly right, Robert. That's why we don't sell technology, because we don't want to be confined to one thing. And also, we're in the business of educating our clients, right? There's so much noise in the market. They get bombarded daily with email and phone calls from this vendor and that vendor and me, right? So why should they pay for a service when they could just go and buy the thing? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's like we always say, clients don't know what they don't know, and you hit it perfectly. They don't do this on a regular basis, even in situations where maybe you brought in a new CFO or a new head of HR, and they actually went through an ERP replacement at the prior place. It's good cultural experience, but again, the uniqueness of the environment you're going. The problem is technology firms want to shoehorn you into their offerings, which is it's not a bad thing. I get it. You're there to sell a product or a suite of products, but it's a very myopic way of looking at things because every single client is unique in their desire and vision, their financial ability, their cultural ability.
Mhm.
And you have to really understand the nuance of that so that the solution actually is viable and sustainable. It's pretty easy to get a council or a county commission to bite off on a nice piece of technology with some one-time dollars. It's another thing where 2 years later, it either hasn't been implemented and the vendor's already gone away. It's been implemented, but it doesn't work the way that it was supposed to in the first place, or it was sort of implemented and they have a bunch of modules that they're still paying for that were never actually turned on because, as we talked about before, the software vendor wants you to get you to go live as quickly as possible. That's how they
Mhm.
maximize their profit. So if we can take shortcuts along the way and go, having a problem with user acceptance testing on this module, let's fix that later after go live. Terrible thing to do. You've heard me talk about that many times because you never have the resources to go back and revisit that and fix it. It's the reason why
Mhm.
you do it right in the first place. So a rush to a go live, things are not properly implemented, certain functionality was never even turned on, and then 2 or 3 years later, the question is being asked. But we spent $4 million on the CRP system, and it seems to be no better than what we had before. What's going on here? These are the things you have to focus on, and building that relationship like we do, and understanding who you are and what makes you unique, because every single organization is different. Like I said, in a lot of different ways. But the idea is not only the cultural aspect, but what's the sustainability of this? I can give you a product that is net neutral on the overhead it takes to run it. Most organizations are looking for a way to let their FTE count float downward as they go forward, and they're willing to invest in the technology to be able to do that because it's still difficult to hire talent in local gov. It's difficult to retain people as well. So just being able to reduce headcount and resourcing naturally with the product is the biggest TCO that we're seeing now as well. That's what people are looking for. And technology firms will address that to a degree, but like I said, they're there to sell you a product. That's their end goal. We're there to get you on something that's sustainable and is actually going to work for you.
Yeah, long term. So, I mean, we talk about modernization, right? We talk about it all the time. That's what our whole firm is built around. But why is the term modernization? What's changed in terms of modernization for cities and counties over the last year? Why is it? more important now, at least to talk about it than it has been in the past.
Comes down to resourcing, which always seems to be the common drumbeat. But
Hmm.
even that dynamic changes because modernization means a whole variety of things to a whole variety of different clients. For some, it's the piece they want to lead with their public relations. And for some, it's actually imperative for proper service delivery to be on the cutting edge of modernization. Other clients, especially some smaller local gov entities, they can dream big, but they know they're never going to have the resources. They're never going to have the public support to be able to do that. So modernization for them, I've got one client that still doesn't have connectivity out to a lot of their county buildings. Ideally, in their mind, they would like to keep the old-fashioned punch clock that they have. That's incompatible with going with a modern ERP system, but it's not their fault. It's an infrastructure issue. So you have to find the balance between what is going to be possible and practical with you versus in some cases, we can put together a really great selection, give you a variety of vendors shortlisted. You can select them. And
Hmm.
then at the end of the day, when it comes time to start the implementation, the client will go, we just simply don't have the money to do this. We really want this ERP system. We've done all this work. Can we delay this a year? And that's a very difficult situation to be in. And those are tough conversations. Sometimes we have to burst the bubble with a client and go, you're not going to be able to take on this class of an ERP system. You really need to focus on this because this is what is going to be sustainable for you in the long run. And you brought up legacy.
Hmm.
And that is such a key thing now that 4 or 5 years ago wasn't necessarily in play. There's so many internal senior leadership levels like CFO and CHRO, and even like the CIO in some cases. They want this to truly be their legacy and they mean it. They want modernization. They want to leave the organization better than when they started in that position. So sometimes those are very small goals that are attainable, but there's larger goals as well that by a lot of other places definition would be modernization, but you're never going to be able to get the funding and the resource and the support to be able to do that. Local gov in a lot of places still struggles. They always have, they probably always will to a great degree, and therefore you have to right size the solution for them and can't give them some monstrosity that increases the overhead for them to be able to do it. It's simply not sustainable.
No. What? How does being vendor agnostic set us apart?
We can really truly right size the correct solution for you. One of the reasons why I also don't like to align specifically with the vendors because things change on a regular
Mhm.
basis. And even in small ways, there's a product that we, for a while, were doing a lot of implementations on the replacement of that product with another platform simply because that vendor who had cornered that particular market for an ERP system was losing a lot of their staff. So not only were they not putting development and research and development back into the product as well, but their regular support staff who knew the product, who knew the customers or the customer relationships, folks were leaving. A little bit was culturally, a lot of it was actually pay, what they were willing to pay people. So they were losing people. And so it was still a good product, but people were jumping off of it because they weren't getting the regular support, the experts that they had come to rely upon to fix certain issues or develop a certain module, or come in and redo some of the policy settings configuration. All that knowledge started to evaporate and customer service suffered. And we just watched them dwindle down. No fault of the product, the fault of the company and the direction that they wanted to go in or they had to go in. So
Mhm.
just because this product is great today and they're really eating the lunch of this other product and they're really taking over the market, and I could name some names but I won't. uh,
Not naming names. No.
they might not be there in 2 years. It might not be the same level of service, and in some cases they do drastically change the product and not for the better. It just changes too much. It would be difficult for me to just look at you and go, okay, you're this size market, you need this particular ERP system, because we actually need to dive in, see where the pain points are, the specific things that are unique to you. But every time we do demos, people think that we see the same system over and over again, and we do to an extent. But a lot of times these demos, you get to see where this vendor is today, the software vendor is today versus where they were a year ago when you last looked at a demo for another client. And sometimes that's a massive difference. Hence the reason why we can't just align ourselves with one particular product in the first place, is that environment changes too much.
Right, right. And every organization is different and they do business differently, right? They have different needs, they have different integrations. So I always get a little passionate, if you will, about some firms who are, system integrators, but they have another side of the business that gives an agnostic, needs assessment or does some of the same work that we do in terms of requirements definitions to procure a new ERP system. What are your thoughts on that? Because for me, it's not really an agnostic approach if one side of your business is they benefit from selling a specific big name, right? I don't think that that is an agnostic approach. I think that they, are very persuaded to pull them into that system, right? Whatever system they're selling. So that piece bothers me a little bit. When you say you're truly agnostic, I think you don't need to be selling any other pieces of software.
Yeah, there's a conflict of interest there that's inherent, and I think if we look at it from the lens of the private sector, they're less worried about that.
Mm,
The public sector, because you're dealing in the realm of public trust, which is the reason why procurement processes are the way they are and the way accountability is done and the reporting and open meeting laws and open records. When you're in the realm of public trust, that takes on a different flavor. And it's not necessarily that there is a conflict of interest. You have to deal with the perceived conflict of interest when you're working in local government. And that's difficult, even to the extreme of you can have a lot of vendors. Let's say you put out a solicitation
mhm,
and you have someone come in, an implementer or even like an actual software vendor. They're going to come in and they're going to do the discovery and they're going to put the needs assessment. And then, of course, they recommend you go with our product. They've got the inside knowledge. They've been there for the beginning. They have the relationship. What you can have, though, is those other folks that were shortlisted for that and didn't get selected, they will file a complaint or a challenge to a procurement and go, hey, this isn't fair. You guys, these folks had the inside track. You didn't honestly look at other products. You just selected this firm and then you allowed them to keep rolling forward and actually implement their particular piece of software. And now you're paying them a maintenance agreement long term. And it's not even that that challenge would be successful. It's that it would cause that procurement to likely be thrown out and have to start all over again. And
mhm,
I've seen in local government where you're halfway through a project, someone challenged the procurement, was actually able to point out something that is plausible, and then they had to throw out the entire procurement, stop the project, put out for RFP all over again, and do the whole entire thing. Except this time, do it in a way that filled that issue that was standing there for the challenge. So it's not even that there is an inappropriate relationship on the recommendation there. It's just the
mhm.
perception of it is very difficult in local government. It asks a lot of questions, as it should, and those are not easily fixed without throwing everything out and starting all over again, which is a terrible waste of money and time.
I agree. Has there ever been a moment or an early clue where you can tell an agency is about to make a tech first decision that might cost them later on?
Yeah, and so there are some instances where it's completely appropriate to do that. And I
Mhm,
usually talk in terms of cybersecurity is the big one. If there's a big gap there, there's something that's really missing. You're in seriously rough shape trying to mitigate an enterprise risk. Yeah, you want to run out and buy a solution just so that you can fill this. You can put in multi-factor authentication or whatever the issue is. Disaster recovery module. That's understandable. You can do that as a short term.
mhm,
It doesn't really work that well with foundational workflow products as well. You can tell, and we've actually been brought in after the fact when something's already been selected. And in one particular case, we had to get the client out of that contract. So there's a lot of cases where we get in there and it's like, oh, they've already made the decision, they've already selected the product. However, we can already tell it's not configurable to the exact way that they need it to. There might be a better product out there. We might be able to push back on the vendor. A lot of clients do not want to go down the road of canceling that contract and going out and doing the procurement all over again. In some cases, when it is such a critical piece, say it's the financial reporting or it's the portal aspect for your interaction with your public, um, you know this is set up for failure. This will not be successful. And the software vendor is already telling you, yeah, I know you guys want that, but we never promised the client that we were going to be able to deliver that. I mean, major red flags that it's like
Mhm.
you're going to spend the money and burn your political capital to implement a product that you know is not going to work for you in the long run. This is a serious situation we need to look at, and decide how we're going to tackle this, because you don't want to start a project that's already set up for failure. That just doesn't make sense.
Right. When you think of these agencies who have really transformed and modernized, what did they do differently than those who just went out and bought the thing?
Great question. It starts with having the vision. They know what the actual outcome is. Um, and sometimes clients have that in mind, especially the ones that have done their homework and go, these are our pain points. This is what we are looking to solve. Um, and sometimes that's just as simple as the mayor just would like a reliable financial report to look at once a month,
Right.
like we've heard in some cases. But they know why the project's important and they know what it's looking to solve. And it can be a mix of a little bit of detail, like very specific things, but it has to tie to an overall vision. Is it going to improve service delivery of the organization? Is it going to allow decision makers to make quicker decisions, more accurate decisions? Is there a bottleneck in a workflow because there's so many manual workarounds that it's choking because no product seems to be able to fit that, but we never really took a look to see what's on the market now that could provide that particular workflow. You have to have a vision, and it can't just be modernization for modernization's sake. It can't just be my mayor's really upset that our technology looks old, buy me some new technology. it
Mhm.
it doesn't work. It in the best case, it leads to a boom bust cycle you've heard me talk about before.
Right.
Spend some real quick one-time dollars, make everything shiny and new, but it's not the exact solution you need, or it creates an incredible overhead or staffing burden.
Right.
Product doesn't get replaced for a period of time, but most people don't use it. You tie it to a vision, you tie it to your overall goals of your organization, and it's a lot easier to align resources to keep the momentum spun up and moving forward, and to deal with the change management. That's the real key. And like I said before, modernization means a lot of things to a variety of people.
Yep.
That can be just a very simple goal of we need to replace our budget book software, all the way to a full suite ERP replacement.
Right. If I'm a CFO or CHRO or even a CIO, how do I manage that political pressure that could be coming from above me? Right. How do I manage that? What advice do you have?
So there's a couple of things I think, if you're buying, like, and we'll speak in terms of ERP. If
Hmm.
you're looking to replace your ERP, a lot of your governance for that project needs to be very similar to the way you make decisions already in the organization. Sometimes we come in with, um, vendors will come in with a particular solution, but they want to have this kind of governance, and that can work, especially if it's a little bit better than what is currently in the organization. But you can't drastically change the way you make decisions and align people in an organization. One, it makes change management very difficult, because change management is just a long multi-year drumbeat over and over again. That's how you extract true change out of folks. A constant vision, constant focus on what the end goal is, as well as at the task level. But you can't move things drastically internally when it comes to political capital. So you have to recognize in the very beginning, who are the stakeholders, who are the folks that are going to be champions, who are going to be very anti this particular product. And you have to have that laid out in your mind, at least before you start taking on a project like this. That's what determines its success. There are going to be challenges, as you go through an ERP implementation. There's even simple things such as leadership changes in the middle of it. You get a new town manager, you get a new mayor, you get a new CIO, you get a new CFO, and you have to deal with that in a unique way as well. But figuring out how that playing field looks, for using your political capital, as well as your change management, you have to have figured out in the first place before you even take on a particular project like this. You can't figure it out later. It's too difficult. It's too multi-layered, and you will get better long-term success if you take the time early on. And it's actually
Right.
we ask that question in shortlist presentations as well. We phrase it a slightly different way, but one of the big reasons why we ask why this, why now is because we usually start to hear what are the political implementations and implications internally on this project. And that actually gives us a great picture as to, oh, okay, this is really why they're doing it, because they're getting pressure from here, or this expectation changed, or this new person came in as the CFO.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't know why my brain went here, but we've been seeing a lot of RFPs lately because there are systems that are sunsetting, right, within the next 2 years. Some big names that are sunsetting. So, what advice do you have for those folks who feel like they're pressured to do something? Because their system is sunsetting and the vendor is like, "Oh, we're going to turn off everything." Where do you start? What do you do?
Those are almost always, not going to say they're false, but their goal is to start working ahead of time to be able to transition you over to a new platform that they've developed, usually at a higher cost. Not always. They can find a way to make it net neutral, or maybe even save you some money. But once they've developed that product, they need to be able to move people to that product quickly so they can maximize their investment on it. So they're going to use a little bit of scare tactics. I'll be nice. I'll say scare tactics to try and get you to move over to there quickly. Even in a situation where a vendor is like, no, we are not going to support this product anymore. There are folks out there that will be able to sustain and support that product during the transition.
Hmm.
When folks select a new ERP system, it's really easy to focus on the new product and ignore the current one,
Hmm.
even to the detriment of the organization. You're sending all your resources towards this new implementation. No one's watching the old system. No one's keeping it up to date. No one's maintaining it. No one's developing the relationship with the vendor or continuing the relationship with the vendor. And the problem is your staff's going to have to live with that old system for 12 to 15, 18 more months. And that's where you're doing your day-to-day workflow. That's where you're
Hmm.
doing a lot of your data management. That's where you're doing a lot of your decision making and your financial reporting. That still needs the care and attention that it got before, but now this layer of new ERP on top of it. But given those situations, if you do have a vendor or the client's maybe taking a little too much time, and they know the clock is ticking and they have to be off this by the end of the calendar year, there are folks out there and solutions out there that'll allow us to be able to maintain that product and get you all the way through go live onto the new one. And if a lot of times that gets the vendor to back off and go, well, I think we can support this for one more year or
Hmm.
6 more months. But if they are serious and they really are not able to help you with that product and do the maintenance on it, you can find folks that will do that in the short term and sign a 3 month or 6 month contract to be able to get that to continue. So vendor threats don't resonate with me, because when I worked in local government, a lot of times I felt like I was being sold something rather than being told the truth. It's one of the reasons also why we do what we do for our clients. So very rarely are those vendor threats legitimate. I mean, for them to be able to turn off a massive system for a massive county, the public relations disaster that would be is just completely unacceptable. So you need someone like us to go through there and comb through and figure out what really is and is not going to happen here on December 31st of this year. Is this system really going to evaporate, or is this just the vendor trying to push their Q4 sales and get you signed on to a new product?
Right. Maybe we should go live on vendor threats. And by the way, we love our vendor friends. They support us in every aspect, and we are not trying to talk badly about any one vendor. This is just what we've seen internally as we go through some of these projects. The other one I love is, this offer is only available to you for the next 2 weeks. You better sign on the dotted line right now.
Yeah,
uh,
or the 5% discount will no
yeah.
longer apply as of
Right.
October 1st, and
Right.
it's it, what happens behind the scenes is what usually occurs with clients is they've gotten the funding approval, but it hasn't been approved by their governing body, or there's a person who's out sick, or procurement needs to button up this document, or contract negotiations
Hmm.
are still not complete. These are tons of valid reasons as to why local government is not able to issue you a PO, which is what most vendors are looking for. Is, oh, I've got the PO, now I can start. It's not because they're slow and they're dragging their feet. That happens sometimes, but most of the time, there's something that's not complete that needs to be completed internally, and then we will issue you your PO. So
Mhm.
software vendors have to understand, I get it. You want to have your Q3 numbers in, especially if you're going to get a commission check. I know you really want that, but just be careful with how you try and motivate clients to get that done sooner rather than later, because this year we've dealt with 2 clients that got very upset with the software vendor, an
Mhm.
otherwise good relationship, simply
Right.
because the salesperson was calling every day and going, "Hey, that 5% discount evaporates October 1st." And it's like, "Oh, come on. That's
Right.
this is the way things happen, and you know that. So we don't need to go to tactics like that to be able to get things moving along."
Yeah, moving forward. So we do have some folks in the comments. Hey, Clay. Hey, Katie. Hey, Brent. Hey, Mikey. Mikey says it starts with having a vision, then thinking about the outcomes. This is so true. I think too many people in general think about the benefits and the outcomes first instead of why they're actually committing to the process, which is the vision.
Yeah, so a lot of technology vendors, especially when they're offering you a product to replace one of your workflows,
Hmm.
they're guessing at your particular needs, and then they're taking that and they're framing it in the aspect of, hey, this is a really nifty system. It does this. It has this kind of reporting. It has this kind of automation. Um, but w- there's so many cases we've seen where the technology was really cool, but it didn't move the needle. And a
Right.
year later, early AI adoption. I'll take on that one. Folks were starting to jump on the bandwagon of AI is this great tool. It's going to modernize the way we do things. We don't have to go to a software company to get this figured out. We can fire this up today and start using it, except they aligned it with processes that either didn't matter or looked great, but like I said, didn't move the needle. And a year later, you feel incredibly let down. You're like, we spent all that time and the energy and that political capital and change management for a product that at the end of the day, it looks really nifty, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't
Right.
enhance the mission or service delivery of the organization. And technology vendors are pretty excited about their product. You have to be able to sort through, okay, that's a poor assumption that you're making. This is actually what this needs to solve. You
Hmm.
need to be able to do that. Otherwise, it looks like, oh, this is great. Here's the check. Let's implement it. Let's turn it on. And a year later, it's like, didn't provide us any benefit whatsoever. And now, when you find the right solution, and now you got to go back to your governing body, they're like, here we go again. You,
Yeah.
you lose a lot of credibility doing things like that.
You do, and that's a great point. If you all have not seen our YouTube video on AI being another technology implementation, please go out to our YouTube channel and follow AV on Instagram because he just got back from a conference from the Government AI Coalition, and he talks about what he learned from that conference, and then also that AI should be treated no differently than any modernization project in terms of, excuse me, you still have to do the groundwork. You still have to identify those outcomes. You still have to understand what you're trying to achieve. It's not a race. It's not a race.
Yeah, well, and I also want to point out, I've been beating up on technology vendors a little bit on this. It's important to recognize that even elected governing bodies, elected officials, have this very traditional approach to things that we call, instead of ready, aim, fire, it's ready, fire, aim. A lot of governing bodies like to do that because they also think that they're being proactive to when someone comes to a council meeting and talks about how I can't pay my water bill online. They will jump towards, well, let's find some funding for something like that. There's obviously public support for it, and I would like IT to be able to run this down. That is very much of a ready, fire, aim solution. So it's not just technology vendors, but the problem is that does set up a perfect environment for a technology vendor to go, I've got a solution for being able to take portal payments on the water bill, and I can have that live for you in 30 days. And that's not a bad thing, but you really need to vet as to what you're going to get for that, because that's a great claim. But again, with all the other things we talked about, is it actually going to be a useful product in the long run? Or are they charging you a ridiculous amount of money to be able to run that portal for you? And then therefore now you have something that's an enterprise fund
Mhm.
service delivery that starts the funding starts dwindling off significantly because now they're losing a lot by paying this other firm to run the portal. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of issues that actually come from the elected bodies themselves that prefer to quickly react, throw money and resources at it, give you something in 30 days, and that's a lot of the challenge we work with clients as well. Is let's slow down, let's tie this to a vision, let's make sure this is exactly what you need, let's make sure it's
Yeah.
sustainable funding wise and resource wise.
And let's have a plan and a roadmap and prioritize those things, you know. So because maybe you fix, the payment issue, but then that causes other issues like funding dwindling or whatever else, right? So long-term vision is key. Before we wrap up, Robert, Clay asks, when a tenured public sector employee digs in their heels fighting against a major technology upgrade for the org, who usually wins and why?
It's a great question, because I was just talking with a client 3 weeks ago about this in particular. I'm going to use I'm going to use the consultant term that we haven't used yet. It depends, and I'll be honest with what this client was telling me. Their concern was they needed to figure out who they actually can bring along on the change management, um, versus folks that they know this person's been very clear. I'm not going to participate in this. I don't believe in this new system. You're not going to train my staff. You're not going to implement the modules. I want my reporting done the old fashioned way. There's a whole variety of things in there. The reason why I say it depends is because sometimes those are directly elected. A county treasurer, in some cases, is directly elected by the people. So
Mhm.
therefore, it's very difficult to have sway, or to be able to bring this person to the table, because they don't answer to a county manager particularly, or even a county governing board.
Right.
They report directly to the people on things like that. So the dynamics are all over the place as to what is going to be possible and what's practical and what makes sense. In a lot of cases, this is easily resolvable by just talking with the person, and making sure they understand what this ERP replacement is and isn't, because the isn't is the area where everyone has their insecurities. I'm not going to be able to understand this new system. I don't want to change the way my workflow currently works because I just figured out how to do it in the first place. Please don't change my world. That's the reason why there's a lot of that. A lot of that is solvable. Occasionally, you will run into a person where they're just like, I'm simply not going to get on board with this. And sometimes you find that person a new position in the organization. Sometimes they announce that they're going to leave within 6 months. It can vary, but it gets a little unique from organization to organization, and it winds up coming down to political capital and political credibility is the direct way of saying it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I I'm very simplistic, but I think open communication, right? A lot of these end users probably have no clue as to how much their job could change with the new system, right? Maybe they're scared that the system is going to take their job, right? And so there is some resistance to change there. But I think what they don't know, right? They don't know what a new system could do and how much easier it can make their job.
Yeah,
So
and
just
that's why we're there.
that's
Help us with. I
it.
tell clients all the time, let me help you with the messaging on that.
Yep.
Some of that does need to be done internally by leadership in the organization, but we do this all the time. Let me really help you in delivering that messaging. And if we need to sit down with that one particular user and just focus on them for 30 minutes and answer all their questions and show them how all this works, um, more than happy to do that. That's the kind of stuff we do all day long. That's critical for projects to move forward. I love it when clients leverage our experience on that to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're here for. So, as we wrap up today, any final thoughts on Avero not being a tech firm?
Let me be your bulldog and your advocate, because
There-
that's what I actually enjoy the most. I get to leverage my experience, the team's experience here, all of our experience to give you the outcome that you need. Um, so asking questions is always a great thing. Like I tell people, if you just want to reach out to us and say, "Hey, I think this contract I'm looking at is kind of weird for this technology piece," please let us spend a little bit of time looking at that and talking to you and handing out some free advice because like I said, at the end of the day, modernization means a whole variety of things and goals are all over the place. So don't think as you look at this other city and go, wow, I wish we had that. We're so far behind. That's a different dynamic than what you're dealing with. We
Mm,
have the experience that helps walk you through whatever that goal is and what modernization looks like to you. It doesn't have to be multi-million dollar,
no.
high tier ERP systems.
No, it does not. Allow us to be that trusted advisor. We are nerds about all of the work that we
Yeah.
do. We really do want to help all of our public sector agencies break through the noise because there is so much noise and so much competition in the market, and that's why we exist. We want to be that trusted advisor to help you break through the noise of all the technology products out there. So, without further ado, I hope you all have a very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Katie and Brent. And who else joined? Mikey joined. Thank you all for joining us today and for chatting in the chat box. Please go out and follow us on all social media channels. We have great content out there, and review the video we did a few years ago. It wasn't me. I don't know if I was around then, but let us know who won. I think it's us. Me and Robert. I think did a better job than UNAV. No, I'm kidding. But thank you all. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week. Bye.